So I'm going to change things around a little bit. I think I need to get grounded. So we're just going to do our meditation first. Is that okay? Yeah. So just get comfortable right where you are. Hopefully with your feet on the ground. Connecting to Mother Earth. Connecting to this moment. Connecting to this very moment. I want to take you on a little journey. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable to do so. And just imagine yourself. You're in the forest. And you're a lion. Struggling. Fearful. A lion. But next to you is this beautiful little girl, so innocent. She represents innocence. In a blue dress, red shoes. And she says, don't worry. Everything's going to be okay. We're going to travel on this beautiful golden road. And we're going to find a wizard who's going to help bring your courage back, Mr. Lion. And so you grab alongside her arm and you begin walking, and along the way you find another person who is lost, who is considered broken because they've lost their heart. And so together they continue on their journey down this beautiful yellow brick road until they find another person. This person has lost their intelligence, not making good decisions. And so they grab that person too. And they continue walking down that golden road. And finally they reach the end. The wizard, they're so excited. Everyone is wound up. They're going to be refilled. And they know this person behind that curtain is going to give them what they need. And then the curtain gets pulled back. And to their surprise, it's a mirror. It's a mirror. And they begin to become disappointed. And you look at that mirror and go, wait, I wanted my courage back. And metaphorically, that wizard, that truth is that we were there all the time. You see, all we had to do was click our heels. The power was there the whole time to take us back to the truth and that we are one. Always there for us, always available. Just look in the mirror. The courage never left you. The courage was always there. And as we click our heels back to reality, we come back filled with courage, fearlessness, strength, empowered, knowing that it's there for us always, all the time, that power. Just remind ourselves to look in the mirror. We are so blessed. And so it is. Amen. So it's very interesting. Christina actually asked me to come back in February, and then again in March, then again in April, and then again in May. I said, come on, Christina, you got to book me out sooner. So actually in April, she said, let's do June. And I said, June is it. Let's do it. Now, what she didn't tell me is it happened to be Pride weekend in Nashville. Fabulous shirt, by the way. I love your shirt. Wow. Then I walk into this church and I hear the music. And about that time, my friend texts me and says, I bet they've got good music as I'm videoing her singing Lady Gaga, right? Wow, this is a little different kind of church. Thank you, Christina. The other 6 churches I've been speaking at in Kentucky and Ohio, doesn't have that. So thank you to Michelle and Chris, David, and Steph for helping me, and Sam, Marcia, everyone for your kind and generous welcoming to me here. It's so funny, I think about Pride Weekend, and I think about the story of the Wizard of Oz and how many of us have gone through what we would consider maybe brokenness or not having something we need to survive in life, right? Something that we imagine, but it takes courage to imagine that thing of which we think we really need. And when we look in the mirror, it's truly already there. But it's harder for us. We think in our minds we're missing something. And maybe sometimes we are. Maybe the world is missing something, but we're not missing anything. And so I love The Wizard of Oz because the story begins with an innocent girl, which I think is metaphysical of our raw, innocent nature of who we are as beings. And then we pick up these people along the way, these people that are inadequate, that don't have what they really need to be what they considered whole and complete. But then when they get to the wizard, I like to think that's metaphysically our own divine being. That's our own inner self that's always available to us. We just have to click our heels and go back home to the truth, you see. Now, I did this talk, a little bit of it, at a church last week in Ohio, and we had Juneteenth Day, celebrating the release of slavery in June of 1863. We had Pride was going on there as well. And then we have this idea of courage the same day as Father's Day. And so I said, let's talk about courage. Well, then when Christina asked me, she said, what's your talk title? But if you don't mind, let's continue on with the 12 powers. And I said, that's perfect. I said, what's your talk? She said, courage to imagine. You see, divine flow flowing right in and through this very moment, this very day, into this space. And you are a part of that carrying on, of that flow. I like to think about what it takes for us to have courage to imagine, because we have so many tools with unity that are so amazing that we can do this with, and yet sometimes it's hard to go there. Let us affirm before we begin. If you would put up on the screen the affirmation. I'd just like you to affirm this with me together. I courageously use imagination to manifest my best higher self. To manifest my best higher self. Now, Pride is a big day for me. I lived in Fort Lauderdale for 11 years, okay? You know, Gay Central, fabulousness, you know, you could wear a rainbow and it's normal, that kind of thing. And I was very blessed to be the president of the Pride Festival for 3 years. So I got to truly create imagination. And as a matter of fact, I brought a picture of me in my Wizard of Oz float. It took a lot of courage. Well, it took a lot of makeup too, but because that's me as Dorothy. Now, what you have to know about me, a lot of people think gay people just naturally like to dress up like women. Well, not all of us do, okay? And that took a lot of makeup. He was worn out after he got me done. But what's funny is I got to imagine a float, imagine this fun idea of going down the road, but it took a lot of courage because you've got people standing out with signs, right? Saying, you know, you're going to hell, you're going to this, blah, 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 blah. And so we're trying to get down this thing, proving our point, trying to manifest equality, equalness in our lives. And it's hard sometimes when you're in the middle of this to go, how do I do that and stand in courage and at the same time honor other people's thoughts and ideas? This week has been kind of like that, right? Like a crazy week. It's like, how do I stand in this, stand in my truth, and try to honor that person that I don't agree with? It's tough, man. It's just a tough. But I tell you that unity is probably poised more than any movement, any idea, any message out there to stand in it, honor it, and yet know the truth without shoving you, honoring where you are. Next screen, please. So there are three components of courage, and I want to focus on courage because imagination is going to be next. But I think courage is so important because we can use courage on everything. And as you all have gone through all the, I think how many weeks have you been doing the 12 powers now? Anybody know the number? 4 or 5? I don't know. So as you go through these, what you find is the powers work together. If you try to do a single power, it typically doesn't work. You've got to have some powers to add to the other power. So let's talk about courage. Courage is technically not a 12 power, but it is a power. Trust me, it's very powerful. So for there to be courage, there has to be a significant risk of harm or loss. In other words, it can go bad. There is judgment. You can pass or you can fail. When you take courage, it's possible that you do good or you do bad. And then there's both the willingness and the ability to carry out the action. Now, that's unity's fifth principle. Take action, right? Because any of this, courage doesn't work unless you take action. It's taking action knowing there can be a judgment or a risk. Let's go to the next slide, please. Then there are three types of courage. Now, most of us probably think of physical courage. We think of the fireman, the military person, that person that goes out and has courage, right, to save someone or do. But there's two other types. We have personal courage. Now, the personal courage is when you get to my age, you hit 57, and I wanted to get a doctorate degree. It's kind of like a thing on my list, right? So I'm like, but can I do it? I'm 57. Like, my brain isn't working like it used to. Can I do that? That's personal courage, saying, yes, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take a chance on that. I know I can do this. Let's do it. And then moral courage. And moral courage is like Rosa Parks in the back of a bus, and she's told to get off that bus. And she refuses. She refuses. That moral courage began a movement. It could begin a change in our world immediately. So there's the three types of courage. If you go to the next one. So let's talk about what lessons for the cowardly lion. I love this. The guy who wrote this article is not unity, but he's unity. He just didn't know it. Don't be a victim of disorganized thinking. Is that not a unity? That's pure unity. Because that's what happens. You see, when the cowardly lion the whole time was going through this, instead of saying, I am courageous, I am strong, I am fearless, I am weak, I am cowardly. You see, we get to choose every day the thoughts. You know the old saying, thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. We get to choose what thoughts that are and how we go into the world and show up. And this week is a good week to use that. Because our thoughts can immediately go to, you're a bad person, you're wrong, you're thinking this way. We have tools at Unity. We have tools. Number 2, courage is all about the heart. Now, what a lot of people don't know, as a matter of fact, the writer of this article says they gave the lion the wrong, he should have got the heart. Because C-O-U in Latin is heart. Now, why is that? Because it takes heart to have courage. Think about it. If you're a mom, a dad, a son, a daughter, child, whatever it is, if it's in your heart, you're willing to fight for that, you see? You're willing to stand up for it. So it's in your heart. Courage is all about heart. And then the final thing we learned from the cowardly lion, you don't need the help. Oh, it's nice to have support. It's nice to have people around you supporting you, raising you up. But the truth is, as Dorothy found out, you had the power the entire time. Charles and Myrtle Fillmore realized that. Jesus realized that. It's all there. Can we slow down and get rid of the fog enough to recognize and realize who we are? You can go to the next slide, please. Now let's talk about imagination. No, let's don't. Let's decrease our fear first. So what can we do to increase our courage? Decrease our fear. How do we do that? We do that with, I'm doing a workshop right now called From Surviving to Thriving every month. And anyone that's interested in that, it's free. It's once a month. And this is part of what we talked about here, and it's exposure therapy. So if we need courage, how do we do it? We actually put ourselves in it. For example, if you have fear of speaking, what's the best way to start learning to speak? Well, you surround yourself with people who love you, like church, right? Some people from church. And you start practicing speaking. And eventually that exposure allows you to start being courageous. Increase our willingness and motivation for acting. Positive reappraisal. This is something that I really had to do because a lot of times I would think negatively about things. And it's easy for us to do that as human beings. Eric Butterworth says people call that the reality. That's not the reality. The reality is a positive thinking. So how do we positively reappraise something? So when we see something that seems like it's not working in our life, how do we have courage to work around that? We rethink it. We rethink it. We go, hey, now hold on. How can I turn that negative into a positive for me? And once we reappraise it, now when it comes up again, we start thinking about it differently and we have more courage to do it. All right, now we're going to move into imagination. So I love Reverend Dr. Paul Hasselbeck. He is an incredible teacher. He's an incredible metaphysician. And he wrote this book, Power Up. Have any of you all ever read or did a class with this? It's a great book, and it's all about the 12 powers. But he talks about imagination as in it's something we all have, but we have to balance it. Because if we get an overdeveloped imagination, then we might be thinking too much. We're doing this imagining all the time and we never get anything done. And then he talks about an underdeveloped imagination. And that's somebody who becomes slothful. They can't imagine anything. They maybe go to buy a house and they can't see their furniture in it. They can't see it beyond the paint. So how do we use our imagination in a way that supports us, in a way? So what I love about Christina, and I don't know if she realized this, but putting courage with imagination worked in both ways. Not only do we have and can create courage to imagine, but we can also have courage to not over-imagine so that we balance that. And this world is tough right now. It's tough. We've got, phones. And these phones can draw all of our attention. And next thing you know, we're imagining and we're watching. I found myself sometimes going, I'm like, I've been on this phone for half an hour and didn't even realize it. It just caught up with me. See, that's that overdeveloped imagination. We start seeing and doing things. So we have courage. We use these principles of courage so that we can control that imagination and we can be in a space where we're imagining for our good. He calls it I think he calls it a Christ nature here. Conscious imagination through our true identity. So what does that mean? That means we use our courage to imagine our best Christ self. How is it that we can show up in the world? How is it that we can use courage and imagination to show up and be the best Christ that we can be in the world? I know for me, it was really, really tough when I first started with Unity. I had given up my business in Fort Lauderdale. I sold it. I got the call to ministry and thought, okay, I'm going to go do a church, right? That was my thought. The minister at the time, she was at my other church. She was making $120,000 a year. Ministers don't make that much money, trust me. It was a faux pas, but it got me to Unity Village. See, my mindset still wasn't right yet. So I get there, I sell my business, I do everything, and when, after my first year, I went to school, no one told me I had to sign up also to get ordained. So I missed almost a whole year, and you can only do it once a year. So I get to that time, and it's time for me to get admitted, and I've got my stuff together, right? I'm ready to go. I'm going to be a minister. And I get redirected. Talk to us next year. Wow. You see, my imagination just went the wrong way. That's not what I imagined. And I had courage. I had the courage to imagine, but it wasn't the right way. But you know what? The next year, with lots and lots more courage, I learned to reimagine a different path. You see, now I'm on a path of reimagining what's this life going to be like. So I get ready to finish my school, and the CEO calls me and says, hey, we think you would be a great VP. Why don't you run our entire hospitality division? You can run the retreats, the weddings, the hotel, everything. So I said, wow, another reimagine, right? This one I didn't dream of, but I can imagine being in that position. Scared, but courage-filled, I did it for almost 2 years. 2 years. I made magic at Unity Village. I was so blessed. I had a team that was supporting me. We converted more spaces there. They had never seen a shift and change in 20 months. And then I got fired. I didn't imagine that one. Didn't imagine that one. Worst part is they paid me to leave. They gave me a severance package. That was the best part. But you know, I started reimagining. I started using my courage to know, what is it that's going on right now? What is it in my life that is taking this big shift that's allowing me? Because I know I'm great at what I do. I am really good at what I do. I got home. I decided to go back home and be with my aging parents. And I walked into a drug addict situation. I walked into a parents that had been drained for hundreds of thousands of dollars that were nearly wiped out. If I had not come home, my parents would have lost everything they had. I reimagined my life, you see. Now I came with courage to help my own parents to make a shift in their life. You see, those people at Unity Village weren't hurting me. They were change agents. They had imagined a different situation there. I'd done my work. They were in a great position. So now I reimagine my new life. And then Martha Creek comes in and reimagines more of it for me. She says, you're going to start speaking to churches. You're not done. You're just getting started. Unity Village doesn't control your life. You do. Reimagine it. Use that courage and step up into a play. So I ask you now, what in your life can you reimagine? How can you use courage to rethink, reimagine what's going on around you? This week is a perfect week for you to start. You know, Reverend Christina has shared so much with me about this church. That's why I was so excited to be here, because when the minister is that excited, you know something's beautiful here. So now I charge you with the idea, with imagining, how can you go out into this world after you walk out that door today and make a difference in somebody's life? Use your courage, your imagination, to see something big and beautiful and bold for yourself. But once you do that, help somebody else imagine. Help them have courage. You've got the tools right here at Unity. Thank you for having me here. It's been a blessing to me. So it is.